Okay, so quick announcements. Programming contest, the DigiKey programming contest is coming up. We need students. We have to get the names in this week. So we'd like students who are interested to send a message to me or Rick Kea by Wednesday. That's tomorrow. There. This is a great opportunity for this. They even if you don't do very well, and tell you, our team certainly don't do that great at the contest because we do not like. There are lots of colleges who have a four credit course dedicated to just practicing for the programming contest, and we don't do that here. But still, I would say half of the people hired from St. Scholastica at DigiKey have been on the programming team. So even if you don't, just being there and being part of that activity elevates your status at DigiKey and promotes you there. So just keep that in mind if you're interested in that. It also looks really good to other employers to be part of a coding competition for it. And I think DigiKey is a lot more fun than the other one, some of the other ones here because they do a really good job at making it. Has anyone here been? Was anyone here at it last? Was it good?
It was good. I liked it.
Yeah. We didn't do very well, I assume.
Not really well, but
Yeah, right. We never do very well. Yeah. But did you did the chat like they have those instant, what do they call them, where they pop stuff on? Do they still do it when they pop stuff on the screen and you have to do a challenge?
yeah,
Yeah. It's that. How about build? Do you have to build or do some hands-on thing?
yeah,
Uh,
like a computer that,
okay.
and then they were like fun questions. Like they just appear like a picture on the screen, and then you can apply.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yes. So yeah. So I mean, it's not like you sit there all day and are just trying to solve insolvable problems all day. They seem, my feelings, they do a pretty good job of making it engaging today. Innovation Scholars is the other thing. I think we are meeting later on today to start reviewing applications. So I think we'll be looking at applications for the next couple of days. But if you haven't applied and you're interested in that, make sure you have your application in for that. So um, uh, today, so again, I apologize. We're going fast. I believe we're going fast in this class, doing lots of stuff, and we'll continue to do that. One of the reasons is we're trying to make room for some newer stuff towards the end of class, the last 4 weeks there. So although this says unit 4, I actually copied unit 8 from last time I taught this class and made it into unit 4. So we are technically doing unit 8 stuff. The last time we taught this would be in unit 8 here. So, and again, this week we're also combining two kind of separate topics together because some of them are not as important as they used to be. And again, we'll look at that. So we're going to look at two kind of things. Working with other apps or with other screens, and there will be two ways we're going to do that. One is how to have your app connect up to another person's app, like the calendar app or the web app or the phone app. So if you want your app to text someone else or to open up the text app or open up the calendar app and put something in there, how do you do that? And in Android, there's something called intents for that here. So we'll be looking at that. Related to that is how do you open up another screen or manage another screen on your page? So in Java, the way you connect up to another app and the way you connect up to another screen of your own app are very similar stuff. And so we tend to look at those the same. Now, though, when we get to Kotlin, they will be different here. So it'll be a little different how we do this in Kotlin. Today, we're going to do Java. Thursday, we're going to do Kotlin again this week. And related to this, we're going to bring in web APIs. And you probably have done a web API in some other class. I think even in Java 1 or 2, we do that, where again, we're going out to like the weather API and pulling in the weather information as a JSON file, or going somewhere and getting this stuff. So these are generally called RESTful APIs. RESTful is just the adjective for the way we get them. And we send out a request, we wait a little bit, and that request comes back. Generally, they have to be asynchronous. So you have to send out a request and then you wait. Well, you do something else, and eventually that request comes back. It used to be very hard to do, and we would spend at least a week in this class doing it. But now with the new libraries for it, they take care of a lot of that. So we'll look at the old hard way and laugh and do it the new way there. So, and appreciate that, hopefully. So we'll do web APIs here for part of this. So that's what we're kind of looking at. Today we'll do Java. And I hope to get down and do the Java version of this learning activity and bring that in here today. So, but let's do a couple stuff before we get there. So let's talk about intents, what are called intents in Java. Well, let's talk about implicit intents first. So these are in Java or Kotlin. If you want to start up another app on your phone, you use an implicit intent there. You basically say, I need a map app. And you tell the Android operating system, I need a map app to map this. And then the Android operating system takes care of it, finds a map app. And again, sometimes there are multiple map apps. I don't know if you've ever been on a phone where especially a new phone, where you do something, it says, which map app do you want to use, or which phone dialer do you want to use, or which, and you can choose, always use this one, or each time ask you to use this one. So again, the operating system takes care of that here. So again, there's something called intents for this stuff. And we start up another activity. So again, we create an intent. We're intending to start up another activity, and then we use this start activity for that. And this kind of walks you through this stuff. I'm going to talk about. So again, there are two types of intents, explicit and implicit intents. We're just right now talking about implicit intents. We don't name a specific component. Instead, we say we need someone to do mapping, or we need someone to, we need a calendar, and then the operating system. So we just implicitly say what we need it to do, and there are ways of saying that. So we build the code for this and send it. I'm actually going to jump back to common intents, and we'll just look at some of this code here. So like here on the right side are a bunch of the common intents. So again, calendar here. This is how we would create a calendar activity. And like in Java, this is what we would do to add an event there. We create a new intent here with these requirements. We pass us some data here, the title of the event, the location, the begin time, and the end time here. And then we ask the operating system to resolve this activity. And what that'll go do is find ask the user figure out what calendar. Is there just one calendar? If there's multiple calendar apps, which one the user wants to do. Once we've found what one we should use, we start that activity and start up the calendar there. So this is what we kind of do. And again, we do basically the same thing in Kotlin here. So, taking a picture here, adding a contact, sending someone email. Let's do mapping a location here. So again, in Java, We create an intent, new intent. And there are different things like, are you going to want to view something? Do you want to do something, add something? We won't go over those in too much detail here. And again, we also have to set some data. And in this course, we pass in some geolocation object here. And then again, we ask the operating system to resolve that activity. And then we start the intent. So it figured out what mapping app you are going to use. And then we start that up and it will spin up that. And again, Kotlin, similar sort of idea. We create an intent, set the data to whatever, like here we're passing in a location thing as a URL kind of here. And then we're resolving it and starting it up. So do a phone call here. So we do a phone call to do a text message. Here's how we send a text message in Java or Kotlin here. And again, there's different versions if we want to, if we know the exact if we just want to bring up the, send a message and bring up the app and the user can then, edit the message and hit send, or do we actually just use the app to send the message and the user never has to actually do anything? So there are sometimes different ways of setting this up and how much do you bring up the app or not for this. Web browsing, here to bring up the web browser. I'll just note, a lot of times now with web browsers, a lot of apps have you can display a web browser in your app. There's you can drop in a web browser in your app. So a lot of apps now might have their own web browser as a widget in their app. But you can also bring up the default one. In fact, often in mine, especially like on social media apps or something, I click on a link, it'll open it up inside its own web browser, but I can say, there's an option to say, open this up in Chrome, and it'll switch over to Chrome and actually open it up in the web browser there in the full Chrome version. So, okay, those are common intents there that we can do. So let's look. And again, we used to do an example with these. I'm not going to do an example right now with these. I think you can just go to those common intents, take that code, put it in there, and do some tweaking to do exactly what you want for that. So let's talk about explicit intents. So in Java, not in Kotlin, but in Java, to do multiple screens, we use the same thing. We create a separate activity. So each screen has its own memory variables and its own activity here. So we create a new activity and we will pass information into that new activity here. It is hard to pass information from one activity to the other. So if you have two screens, they're like two separate apps, and it's very complicated if you just have two screens in your own app, it's very hard to move data from one to the other in this old Java version of this. So they tend to be resource intensive and slow because you're spinning up a whole new activity. It's like you're starting up a whole another app almost here. So let's look at this one. So I'm going to try to create a simple, this is what we used to do, is create this app here. Do I have a link? I thought I had a link in here. I don't know where it is. Okay, well, we'll just go through this and create a second activity and work on that. So I'm just going to walk you through. And again, we're going to not like Google does not recommend creating new apps using this method anymore. They suggest you should be using Kotlin and navigation, and that's what we will be covering on Thursday. So I just want to kind of show you the basics of this, but we're not going to dive too deeply into this section here. So I'm just going to create a new activity, a new project. It's going to be, it has to be a views activity so that it can be in Java. Uh, okay. And I'm going to switch the language over to Java here. Okay. So right now, I'm waiting for this. I start with just one activity called the main activity. So that's one screen here. And there's also just one layout file because again, this is Java. I have the separate layout file for this. So I have a screen and a layout file for the main activity. And so I'm going to want to create a new one. Now, these activities have to be listed in certain places here for this to work. And so I can't just create these files because, for example, there's something called the Android manifest. We haven't mentioned that, but in here is this manifest, and it lists details about your app for this. And for example, it'll list the activities there, and they're actually what are called filters on your activities that'll say launch this activity. And this is what they use, the operating system uses when it's trying to find another app to run, is what these intent filters are. So these are set up for you in your app or, well, in your manifest. And so when we create another activity, we've got to put it in there. And so if we do it right, we can have Android do that all for us. So I'm just wondering why I'm not, since I just built this, why there's an error here. It still looks like, usually this is a problem with it still building here, but it doesn't. Let me just do a build here and see, rebuild this and see what's going on. Yeah, okay. So I just don't know, it's still coming up with an error. Why is that? I don't know if you run into this, but there are times where Android Studio just gets a little confused. And I have to actually quit Android Studio and rerun it and open it up on a project. So if you get someplace where you just cannot figure out why it's getting an error, sometimes it actually helps to quit Android Studio and rerun it here. I find sometimes if I run the app on a phone or something like that, that sometimes helps here. But again, it is complaining about importing these. And yeah, so see, I ran it on my phone and that kind of forced the rebuild and cleaned up my errors for this. And maybe I just needed to wait long enough for it to run, but here. Okay, So now I got this, I've got my main activity here. I'm going to do a new activity here. So rather than doing a new Java class, again, I need to do a new activity because that is going to put it in the manifest and stuff like that here. So I'm going to do I'm going to do an empty views activity. So yeah, let's do yeah, let's do an empty views activity because that should, I think, well, let's do a basic views activity. No, let's try a basic one. I haven't tried these two out. Uh, it should create I need a XML layout file and the activity Java file, and I need it to update the manifest. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to call this, what did I call this over here? Second activity. That was a very creative name. So again, it's asked me for the activity name and the name of the layout file for this one. And then it's going to put it in there. Now, launcher activity, we don't want that. We only want one launcher activity, and that is what is started when you run your app. So I don't want a launcher activity, and I want it in Java. So I'm going to hit finish here. It should create, so it is creating a second activity here. Says I didn't do an empty one, but did a basic one. It creates what are called fragments here. And those are we haven't talked too much about fragments. Those are components that you can kind of move around your screen there. So in our second activity, we can have multiple fragments displayed here. And then in resources and layout, now I have the activity, the second activity. I also have the fragments and these views of that. I probably should have just done the empty activity, and then it would have just made the second activity without the fragments in here. But here, and then the manifest should have been updated automatically. So you can see now I have another second activity listed besides the main activity. I have my second activity. So because we didn't just do new files, we did new activity here. It sets up, the manifest correctly also. So, okay, so we have our main activity. Now, how do we start our second activity from our main activity here for this? So I'm actually going to grab this layout, parts of this layout file. I'm going to grab, I think, this whole layout file as an example of this. I used to draw these things out here, but again, we want to cover a lot today. So I'm just going to paste this layout in here, and then we can look at what it is. It should just have a button that'll go to our second activity here. So again, we're going to enter some basic data here, name and full and some number, and we're going to go to the second activity for it and try to pass that information to the second activity. So there's just a button. This button is called button, creative name for that button here. And then in my main activity code, I'm going to declare these values, edit text, a text view, and a button. So let's go to my main activity. So above the onCreate, I'm going to add those things. I need to do some imports for those. Once I get that set, I want to link those up here so that I can tie them to the UI. So in onCreate here, after I set up my view here, so right in there after this part, I'm going to want to So like the edit text, I want to do a find view by ID and link that in here for both my name and my number. Because again, remember there's this name field and the number field. I'm going to tie those in with this find view by ID, go to the view file and find it with that ID. So that ID, so here's my number, edit text number. So that's why I'm saying edit text number here for this. Now I'm going to set up a button. So again, I'm going to go over here and grab this code for setting up a button. So that's got to be outside the onCreate here is my setup button. I need to do some imports for views and imports for intents. And it looks like the launcher. Nope, I need to create a launcher. Oh yeah, okay. For that. So let's look at this code here for my button. So up here, I'm just calling setup button. I've got a button on the screen. I've linked that in. So I'm going to do a find view by ID for the button. And again, I called it button. That was very creative. And so I have a variable called button also. So now I'm going to set button on, set on click listener and create an on click event. So when we click on the button, we're going to do this code here. So I'm going to get the text from the user entered, the name and the number the user entered on the screen, this name and number. I'm going to get those from my edit text fields here for this. So I'm going to get those two variables. Now I'm going to create an activity and I'm going to call it second activity intent. I'm going to create an intent for my second activity. So I'm going to create an intent here, new intent. And I have to package, I have to provide some context, a link to the app kind of information. So I'm just going to use this main activity stuff. But this is the important one is I'm going to pass in the second activity class. So it knows to start up the second activity. So this is saying we're going to start up the second activity here. We're going to send some data to that. So I call second activity my intent verb, and I can say put extra. And this is going to store information in the intent. And I don't know if you've seen this. This is what I generally call like a bag prop way of doing it, where we're sending information basically in a map or a dictionary to the other intent. So we can put things in bags and we put a label on the bag here. So we're going to send in the name and we're going to put a label on it that says main name. So at the other end, I can go into this bag or this map and say, find something that's called main name and pull it out here. And again, so these are my tags, the main number and the main name. So I have to make sure at the other end, in a second activity, I'm going to pull things out of this bag with these same tags here. So again, we're basically sending data here. And again, it's basically using what is called a map or a dictionary where I can provide a tag and some data. And it can be any sort of data. I'm passing a string here and a double here. It can be a whole object generally. So, okay, so now I've got that. I'm going to, I could start the activity. Nowadays, we use this launcher to do that. Let's go. I don't think I declared a launcher here. So I have to add a launcher. I'm going to add that to my main activity. First, I'm going to declare a launcher, I guess, up here. So outside of onCreate, I'm going to declare a launcher, and I have to import that. And then I have to initialize the launcher. And that's this whole big bucket of code. I'm going to do that before I call my setup because I want, I think, I want to set that up before I do that. So import this class. I'm doing some logs, import that class, import this class. Okay. So the launcher is going to register my activity here, go out and do it. I'm logging saying this. And what the launchers do, so if we're just calling a second activity and don't need any data back from it, we can just do this. And we didn't have to do other part. If we are, again, just creating a second activity and and doing it, I can just start that activity there and do that. And if I don't need any results back, I would just do that. I can just create the second activity, start it, or create that. Now, if I want to start that second activity and get some results back from the activity, I used to do it this way. Nowadays, I need this launcher. So this launcher will launch the second activity and also wait. And when the data comes back from the second activity, I'll show the results. So I can send information to the second activity and get some information back to it. That's an awful lot of code just to make two screens here, just to start up a second activity for this. So in my second activity, well, let's just see if it is actually going to work. I'm going to run this. Let me see if I can mirror this phone. There's my phone being mirrored. Still building, downloading. I'm having trouble. This is supposed to find the actual main activity here. Uber ID. So surprised that worked because I didn't actually modify that. Oh, I think I'm wondering. Uh, we'll try to see what. I'm thinking again because I didn't modify this, but sometimes it's I think is related to the fact that now I am using some fragments in my other part, possibly. I don't know why it's not there. Oh, I think, yeah. So I probably when I overwrote the main activity layout here file. Um, I think it might have changed that. Let's see what. Yeah, the Android ID of the main activity. So up here with the activity, there should be an ID field for this, and that's what when I copied and pasted from the other one, that's what's missing here. So I think let's try that. Save that and run over here. Yeah, that's happier. Okay, now we'll try again. So I copied the entire activity main. What I often do is don't modify this header tag and just copy. If I'm copying from somewhere else, copy just the stuff outside that header tag, because sometimes, again, there's like an ID field there that is particular to this activity or this one there. Um, so, okay, so I have that in there, correct. It's running. I can get this. I can go to my second activity here. Now it actually crashed because I don't think I'm doing error checking. So if I go to log cat, I think it's tried to do some, I'm reading, yeah, so it's trying to convert Java from something here. So in my main activity here, it is trying to parse my edit text field, and I don't do any error checking. So let's do that again. And this time I'm going to make sure I type in something here. So a name and a number so that it can actually parse that. And then I should go start up my second activity. Here's my second activity here. And again, this is showing fragments here. This is showing 2 fragments here. Now, fragments are another way of doing multiple screens here and you can swap between. So you can see this second activity has 2 different fragments. And this is kind of gets towards what we're going to be doing in Kotlin, is being able to just swap, keep a single activity and work with different components within that stuff here. Okay, I don't want to deal too much with this because, again, this is mainly old technology. But again, if you're working with apps that are already out there at a company, you would see often this sort of work for that. Okay. So let's go back, and I'm just going to go on to the next. Let's see. Oh, we're doing time. Let's talk about asynchronous web services and how we're going to do that. So I don't know how much you've talked or run into asynchronous services, but like anytime you go to a database, anytime you do anything slow, you don't want to do it on the UI thread. So there's a thread that handles your UI, your buttons and clicks like that. And we've all experienced sometimes where somewhere that UI thread gets held up and everything freezes on your app or in your web browser or whatever. And we don't like that. We don't want our UI to freeze. So if I say go do something, I should be able to still interact with my UI while that background thing or that other thing is being done there. So that's what we call asynchronous. And again, reading from a database is slow. Reading from the web is slow. Any of these slow activities where we're waiting for something else, we are going to want to create in a separate thread of execution for it. So there's a traditional way of doing this where we actually explicitly create a thread and run it. And we use something called executors in Java for this. We used to actually use it was even more low level than this, but this is the current best practices for this low level. So you can create a thread. Well, you create an executor is just a single thread out there and a handler for that. And then you say execute, and this basically will spin up a new thread. And then in that new thread, you put what you want. So we're actually doing a HTTP client. We're doing a request. We're going out getting some cat facts. We're waiting for the response back, and we're handling that response. So this will spin up a new thread and send out information to that thread here. Now, different languages handle this differently. So in C# in software design, I think we had futures. We would spin up we'd call something and it would return a future string. So it wouldn't be a string, but in the future, it will be a string there. And we pass these future strings around from asynchronous tests. Does that sound familiar from people who have had software design? That we had these futures that we passed. And again, different languages will have different ways of handling these kind of future and allowing maybe your code to keep going on, even though there's a separate thread that's handling stuff in the background. So in Kotlin, there's something called coroutines, and other languages have coroutines also here for doing this stuff. If you've taken the game design class, you can do coroutines in your game to do some processing in your game stuff for this. So coroutines makes this asynchronous calls simpler. So we will do that. So here we will we'll create a function here, and it'll be what is called a suspend function. So it'll be running in the background, basically. So we're calling this function a suspend function, and then we are doing this dispatch here. We're calling this, getting text from this URL and reading that in here. And then our main activity, we can get that fact. So we can just call this. So we define this kind of future or the suspend function, and then we can just call it from our main activity. Here, we can just say, get the fact from that method and then set the text of this to that fact. And this will all run, this will run in the background and then update this without freezing the UI for this. So it is possible with coroutines to manage this all for you. Coroutines are nice because it doesn't just work with HTTP, it can work with any sort of background activity you want for this. But still, this is too complicated for us often, especially for common things. So things like that we do all the time, database and HTTP requests, we do those, everyone, lots of apps do those. So there are special libraries just for, and we looked at the Room library, that hides the asynchronous stuff from us. And in Android, in Java, there's something called, there's a couple ones. One is called Volley here. So Volley is an HTTP library that will hide this. So we don't need to create an executor or a separate thread. We can just have Volley. We can just say, create a new queue a request there, and we'll set up a URL there, and then we can use our get. We can get that URL from that, and then when response comes back, we're going to save that in our text view for this. And if there's an error, we're going to do that. So if we get a response, when we get a response back, we'll update our UI for that. So that so we set up that request we set up our queue, we set up our URL, and then we say, using our queue, add this request to that. So it'll go out and do this request. It'll get this URL, and then when it comes back, we'll do that. So this is the volley library. This is what we used. It was cutting edge 2 years ago when I taught this course. It is a little out of date. It is still used, but is a little out of date here. So the current best practice is probably use a library called Retrofit here for this stuff. Here we'll use, we create an interface to an API server. We're gonna get some fact, and we define a coroutine here. We're using a suspend function here to get the cat facts here. And then with Retrofit, we do this builder. Here's our URL we specify. We're gonna use this factory. And again, we're going to create this. This will convert the JSON we return back here. So we create this class for our API, and then we have this launch for this. And we say our fact is coming from our API, and we're calling get cat facts from that. And that is this function up here, which just gets a fact from this stuff. I have not used Retrofit very much. It still seems complicated to me. I still think Volley is easier and simpler to use. But from what I've read, Retrofit is kind of the industry standard now. So we're going to look at that here. Another thing we need to talk a little bit about is JSON. So first, do we know what JSON is? So again, JSON is a markup language for holding data for that, where we generally have tags and data. So we have a tag, colon, and a data, and we have a whole bunch of data stored in a text field like that. And we'll look some more of that later on. But we need to convert that data, that JSON file, into a Java class. And they're like I think like Java 1 or 2, we manually did that, where we would search for a substring, we'd find that substring and find some string next to it that would match and pull data out of that, because we were learning how to do substring functions and stuff like that. In the real world, you should never be doing that manually because it's so prone to error. You should never write code that processes JSON files manually. You should always be using a JSON library for that. So here we're using one called JSON, Google's JSON library. But again, that is a couple years old and not as popular as it used to be. It still works, but we'll be looking at some alternatives to that also. Again, so this is talking about the JSON parsing. JSON is well known, widely used. Moshi is, again, more modern, Kotlin friendly, sort of like that. So we'll be using that or JSON a lot here. So here's an example of Retrofit with this Moshi here, where again, we are using a factory to build or convert data from a API call into some JSON idea. I think I'm going to skip over this cat facts thing. One of the problems with this is that my standard cat fact API has closed, and so we can no longer get cat facts. It's a very sad day. And I haven't been able to find a replacement cat facts one to use for that. So this is a good example code that walks you through, again, these examples here. It shows it in how we do this in Java. This is the hard way, where you start up your own threads and run that there. So you manage your own threads, you execute a thread, you wait for a response. When the response comes back, you process it there. This is a next level where we use Kotlin and Volley to do this. So this is a library to handle the asynchronous stuff. And again, there's a couple ways of doing this. Option A just goes out and gets the facts, converts that. We get a string back, and we are converting that into a object here that we can just pull the facts from for this. And there's a couple ways of doing this. This is using a library to convert that directly into an object that we can use. This does more of a direct parsing of it. And again, this is what would be called the most AI will label this as the best practice. Retrofit with Moshi with coroutines here for this. So you set up the data, like what is your fact? You create an object to store what you want. Here, you set up your retrofit activity or thing, and you create a network provider here. Often we create this in its own repository so we can pull it out of the main activity, and then the main activity, we set this up. So we're going to look at this, so these examples in Java, the learning activity. So let's jump into the learning activity instead and start having you do some coding there. So today we're going to do Java. So go into learning activity 4, click on this. We're going to accept that assignment. There's our URL. Oops, I always think I should just copy that and not click on it. I never do. Okay, and then here, I'm going to do a new activity, new project from version control. Paste that in there. Clone it. And I'm going to open it up in this window. Now, if you get this, you can ignore the Windows, Microsoft Defender stuff. If you get this invalid Gradle stuff, you should be able to just enable it here, I think, and say okay, and it should find it, I think. So I'll just warn you, I've been trying not to upgrade to the newest Android Studio, but I've kind of had to because like over the weekend, I was grading a bunch of your projects, and a number of you have upgraded to Android Studio. What is it? 1 or what are we at? 0.3. I'm trying to remember what version we are at here. If I look at yeah. See what version I'm at. Yeah, so 2025, I was at 1.1 or 1.2, but I'm now at 2025, 1.3, because again, in order to grade other students' work, I've had to upgrade it to things. So I think this project, and I haven't figured out a way to create new projects to share them with that aren't in the newest version, whatever default version I have here. So if it says, something about something's not, you can't process this, try to go up here and do window help, check for updates, and update to 1.3, Narwhal 1.3, or 2025 1.3 there. Okay, let's look at our apps here. So again, this is a Java app. So we have our layout file here. We have just a bunch of buttons here, and then a status view, text view here. And so when we click on these different buttons, we'll do different things. Most of the code is in the main activity. Now, this isn't optimal, but again, this is just a simple way to start here. So we get our buttons in onCreate. We set up our buttons here, and the buttons call these different things. So I couldn't find cat facts, so we're doing dog facts because there's still a dog facts one out there. So this goes out and gets the dog facts from this API. So again, this URL, if I just take that URL, paste it into my web browser, I get a fact about a dog. Dogs can be trained to detect cancer and alert their owners there for this. So this is and again, this is JSON. It is a tag. The tag is fact, a colon, and then a value here. This value is actually an array with just one thing in it. I can tell it's an array because it has a square bracket. So it is an array, and in that array is one string. So that is my cat fact here that I'm getting. I mean my dog fact. So we are going out and getting that dog fact, processing it. So we're trying to get that and return a string. And again, we're kind of converting that. We want an object that holds that fact. So we create a dog fact class. It is creating a list of facts because again, this is a list of facts. There's only one fact in the list, but it's still a list of facts. And there's also the success. Did we get this? So we also have success, and that is a true false variable. So we create this class to hold the dog fact there because in our main activity, we are going to map that JSON string. This is our response from when we go out and get our results, we're given this response here, and then we're going to use that to convert it into a dog fact object. And then we're going to make sure that it's not null, that everything went okay. And then we're going to display that dog fact out here. So this should be working if I run this on my phone. Well, so I have a method called get dog fact. I have another method called get weather. Again, this is the URL for the weather. And this is my stuff. I'm using this Moshi library to build. When I get a response, that is going to, so yeah, okay, I'm going to, again, I ran into this problem where I've installed this exact same code from a different repository up on the same phone. Okay, here it is. So now I can run it. I can get my dog fact. It should, after a sec, display the dog fact down below. I can get the current weather. It should display the temperature here. So get weather creates a JSON object request here. We send out a get to this URL. We specify a URL. When that request is done, we're given a response. On response, we're given a JSON object here, and we're going to parse it. We're going to use this Moshi library. Remember, there are different libraries for parsing. There's JSON and Moshi. We're going to use this. We're going to build a Moshi object to a parser. So then we're going to parse this using the open weather class. We're going to create an adapter. And once we have that adapter, we're going to get the JSON. We're going to pass our response string to it. So again, we're getting this. Let's copy. If I copy that whole string there. Oops. This is the weather data I'm getting, and that's all JSON. Now, I did put a link, I think, in the learning activities to some adjacent viewer, I think. No, I think it might be under the first one, the implicit explicit calls. No, I may have deleted that, huh? Well, online, there's a number of JSON viewers that are useful. So in this one, I can take a JSON file, JSON data, and paste it in here and view it. And I'll just clean it up and show it in a little nicer format here. And there's a number of other JSON viewers here. What we often see here is like this will have an object, coordinates, and we'll start in a colon, and then it'll have subfields underneath that, lat and long, for latitude and longitude. And so in this sort of situation, we have to make a kind of complicated class here with subclasses underneath it. So in our open weather class, we'll have a subclass for that coordinates that'll map, it'll be the latitude and longitude. So it has to map and be the exact same names as this for this. And there's a weather class that matches this, that'll have the same fields as that does here. And then the main class, like here, is made up of other classes. Well, there should be a class here. The main class was made up like of the coordinates, weather, all that stuff is tied together here. So sometimes creating these classes to map, excuse me, to match this complex JSON is hard to do for that. Okay, in the main activity, we're doing that. So again, we can get the weather activity, we can get these other things. So your job is to, let's go back here. Add your own API to this one. So there's a method here called get student API, where you must implement your API here for this. And then on the phone, here's my phone. In the phone here, I look at it, get student API just says not implemented yet. It sets the text to that. So the button is all wired to call this function. And in this function, there's a text view. You want to set this text, the status view, to be this. So your job now is to go in here in the main activity, scroll down here, find the get student API, and you want to write some code to get data from some API here. Now there's a bunch of APIs available. I'm going to click on this GitHub public API link. And there's a bunch of APIs out there related to any of these areas here. So you can select any of these stuff and get the API for them. So we want you to figure out which API we want to use, and then find a URL you should be able to paste that URL right into your browser and it should return the JSON. So that's a good way to see if that works. Now, some APIs will require a key here that you have to sign up for. Often you have to pay for them. We are not doing that in this class. But like the open weather one, you need a free key to use that. So this actually has my key in it. So sometimes you need to do a key. So I would suggest trying to find one that doesn't require an API key, and certainly one you don't have to pay for, that you can use for this one. And get that one here. And then we're going to want to create a Java class that matches this, the JSON that's returned. So you want to generate the Java class that matches the JSON in the same way that we have a dog facts here. We have an open weather. There's a space news one. There's a currency one here, right? So again, you want to create one of these here. So why don't you spend some time, try to find an API there, try to find a URL that you can generate JSON from. And then you might want to just look at one of these, like the get dog facts. You might want to just copy that code over here, put it up here, and see if you can alter it to do what you want with your URL for that. Okay. Okay. Someone's mentioning that when they run this, I click on these, it doesn't do any, it may not bring up the fact here. One thing you should watch is you can check the log while you're doing this to see if it's giving, so when I click on something, to see if it's giving some error here. We haven't talked at all about permissions, and what often is a problem is your permissions. So when you're running it on a new phone, it might ask you, do you want to give this app permission to use this stuff? In the manifest here, we've had to add a permission line that says we need to be able to use the internet to use this. Now, when you run it, it should pop up a window that's asks you, do you want to give this app permission? I'm not sure if you're running an emulator how that works or not, but if it doesn't, I should be able to go into my apps and set the permissions there manually. And I do that, I think. I don't think it's through Google Play. Oops. I thought it was in Google Play, but I think it might be through settings. So if I go to settings, apps, and I see all my apps here. Actually, it will show my most recent app here. If I go there, I should be able to set the permissions. Oh yeah, no permissions are requested. Interesting. There that it's running without that. So you might want to check that permissions. So if you can't get it to run, watch the logcat while you're running it and see what it's printing out. And then you may have to go edit the permissions. So we'll see how it's, I'm going to walk through a sample. I'm going to try one of these. And again, sometimes it's challenging. I'm going to try, there's this one for the International Space Station showing the location and the number of astronauts up there. So I'm going to go there. They have the latitude and longitude of it here. And it looks like this is the JSON. So if I have that, I'm going to copy that. And again, that's what we want. We're trying to find the URL for this. So I'm going to see if I paste that URL, I get this back. See if I don't know what this all, yeah. I'm just going to paste in this latitude and longitude in here. And this looks like good JSON stuff. So now I want to convert that into a Java class here. And so again, I can go through here and I can use one of these tools that will convert JSON into Java here for this. And I'll want a to create a class here for my like space station news or IIS entity or something like that. There. Now, one thing you can also do, I actually find quite helpful here, is you can bring up AI and bring up some AI here. Say, I am creating a Java app, Android app to read data from this API. And I'm going to give it this. Here is a sample response. So then I'm going to give it the data that came back. I need to create a Java file to hold this response and update this Java code to call this API. And I'm going to give it in my main activity. I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use, let's see, the get weather app version. I'm just going to pass that in here. And see how it does with this stuff. It's almost always going to think longer. Well, this is ChatGPT, so it. Oh, one thing I will point out there is that back to think about. You can also do this within Gemini here. You should have it should have context here, and you can actually specifically tell it to do different things. Oh, it doesn't have my API key in here. I'm going to add my API key in here. Or generate an API. I'm not quite sure what it means by projects here. And if you need to, how that works for you. But anyway, I'm going to copy that API key here and paste it in here. And once you have that set up, you can actually switch to different versions. So if you're doing more complicated code here, you can switch to the pro version. I don't know where your rights are right now with how much access you have to like the pro version. I don't have a bunch of free access to the pro version, but you as a student might there. So I will max out the pro version, but if I switch default view, it'll work. So I could also ask Gemini in here, and what I can actually do is go into agent view and do this. We'll do more of this on Thursday in the Kotlin version of this. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. Okay. So again, it is creating a Moshi-friendly Java thing called IIS now. And yeah, I think that's not a bad name. So again, I'm going to create a new class, new, oops, did it do this? And it didn't do it in, no, it did it in Java, right? Yep, okay. So I'm going to do a new Java class called IIS now. I'm going to paste this in there. I'm just going to copy it and put it in there. I'm going to leave, add that to GitHub. I'm going to leave my package there and paste this in. Oops. Didn't it work here? Because again, they just say your package name here. So of course I'm going to delete that and just leave my package there. But again, they're declaring this class, and this should look very similar to what we generated with the JSON stuff on IIS position with a latitude and longitude and some sort of root class here. So here's my IIS position class here, and that is part of this base class. Their base class is not called root, but ISS now, and it has an ISS position in it here. So that's nice. So it actually did that for me here. And then it is creating a get IIS now method here for this. I'm going to just paste that into my student version. So again, in my main activity, under the student stuff, I'm going to just paste it in here. And so rerun this and see if it will get that student stuff. Oops, and I'm running it in emulator, I guess. So. So here's an interesting thing. So my response back is this. I get an error, clear text HTTP traffic to is not permitted. So in my app, I'm only allowed to go to HTTPS stuff, not HTTP. If I want to do HTTP, I have to go into my manifest, I think, and specifically change some permission to allow that because that's not as secure. Most of these apps should let me do that. So I should be able to go here, where's my open notify? Here it is. If I change this to HTTPS instead of HTTP, I think I can get the same response. And so again, same with my code. I think this should be just HTTPS for that. And now I can rerun this. Why is it complaining about that? Oh, that's not where I want to change it. I want to change it to my main activity. Yeah, here, this HTTPS. And rerun that. So again, you can use AI to this, and then you're going to ask, say, Tom, but if I'm using AI or even this JSON to convert to Java converter, how do I know? I don't really know what's going on. How do I learn this stuff? And I say, well, how about if I give you an assignment where you have to look at this code and explain it all to me? And so this is the assignment this week. I think you can view it, is to do what we call a code review or prep sort of stuff. Has anyone in their work done code review? So often when you write code, you have to share it with other developers. You have to sit down with other developers and go over your code often line by line to make sure it has a lot of companies will have these rules where at least one other developer has to review your code before it can go into production and stuff like that. So that's a pretty common rule there. And one of the common ways of doing it is to do kind of a code review where when I used to do them, there'd be at least two other developers and you just bring up your code on a screen and walk through that code, explain what it does or the changes you made to that code, and then they would sign off on it here. We're going to do something similar here, but less formal, and it's just going to be you're going to pick some code. So again, maybe this code here that we just put in here, this get student stuff, I want to make sure you go, I don't know this, so I'm going to do a code review. I'm going to learn what this code does and explain. So you have to pick at least 20 plus lines of code. It should focus on a single topic or action, something you're doing here. And it should span or interact with at least one other file. So like this one interacts with this ISS now file or uses that. So that would be good stuff to use, a good one to use. And then you're going to record a 3 to 10 minute video explaining this code to me or up here there, where you would just walk through it and say, so this line does this line was this, and so on. So it'll force you to learn what this code actually does, each line, make sure you understand it for this. Because I don't mind using AI, but I think if we're using AI, we should understand the final product that we're still generating with it for that. So this is kind of forcing you to walk through some code. Now, you don't have to pick the hardest code that's in the project. You can pick any code you want to walk through with me. We're just learning this stuff. But pick some code that you want to learn, that you want to walk through and do it. So I'm trying to figure out what's a good way to record the code or record the video. I know in Brightspace, when you submit, so if I switch to student view, oops, not there. If I switch to student view, I go here and go to the assignment. Here. And submit the assignment. I can hit record and record a video here. And it's just using this camera. But I don't think it's doing I don't think I can do a screen capture with this code. So that you can upload a file, but not necessarily. So you can upload a file, but you can't just be pointing to it. I could point my camera to it, but that's not going to work with a lot of us because you don't have a separate camera stand. So I'm not sure if that is the best way. So again, I'm new thing here, so I'm trying to explain. I think you could also go in, do a Zoom. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm doing Zoom and I'm sharing my screen and then I'm recording it here, and you can record it to the cloud, and that'll give you a URL to do.
Windows also has, I'm sure Mac does too, but built-in like screen recording.
Oh, does it?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's Windows Shift S.
Windows Shift S?
Yeah.
But I thought that's for just a code snippet. Oh, you can switch to video mode. Okay.
Select what.
And then it's screen. Ah, okay. So Windows Shift S. And yeah, because I always just use that for screen capture, but you can do video, it looks like. Okay, that's good. Right. Okay. Yeah. And then submit that. That would be a good way of doing it. We've used Loom in the past here, which is another tool if you're used to using that, where you can just record and do a screen capture. So record something and submit it, and we'll see, and we'll compare notes. But that's why I won't complain if you're using AI or some other tools in the learning activity, because I'm going to force you to explain that code in the assignments often going forward. And if we can get this to work, I think we're gonna do this more, frequently going forward, that we'll go over code and then we'll have as assignment you walk through. Hopefully this is low stakes because you just have to record it and I'm the only one who's going to watch it. And so you can record it multiple times, you can practice. It's not like you're doing it. Well, eventually, I think we're going to have you do it with one of your peers there in class. I haven't figured out how to do that with the online students, but eventually we'll probably have you share it with, do pair programming, have you share it with a peer here. But for starters, just record it. Sound good? All right, call me over if you're having any questions. Yeah, you're broke. You have yours not working. Okay. Just an error or a general question? Commits not working? Yeah, so I'll come over and talk to you. If you're here and again you're trying to do a commit, so we commit these changes and I hit push and I get, I need a message, done. And when you commit, so it should say there are warnings and you want to commit anyway. So I'm going to commit and push anyway, and it should push. And if I hit push, but then it says push failed, but because of authentication, then that's a token issue. Your Android Studio has to be set up to talk to your stuff, and we have to set up tokens for that. So yeah, I can talk to you about. I can show you there. So we'll walk through that. Okay.